Nowadays, it feels like I'm sick, you're sick, we're all sick. And today, I want to offer a new perspective on why I believe that is and what we can do to change it. Now, everything I'm about to say is my own personal experience. Take with a grain of salt. This isn't medical advice. I'm not wearing a white lab coat, but this is just my own personal experience and what I've learned about my own body and what, when taught to others, has benefited their lives. And it's made me to feel much healthier, happier, and more fulfilled. So if you have an open mind and an open heart, I highly recommend watching this video. So when it comes to reframing the way we look at being sick, we first need to understand how we're currently looking at it. The way we've been taught through the school system, through the professionals that wear a white lab coat, or what we see on the news, what we see in the commercials, it is hinting at the fact that our bodies are pretty much like a car that just over a period of enough time, it's going to break down. It's going to be sick. It's going to have some parts and screws fall loose that you got to repair. And that's pretty much an idea that's been baked into our society. That is why most jobs have sick days, have paid days off to just be sick, because we think in the span of a year, there's going to be at least a handful of those days we're unable to get out of bed and perform our normal day-to-day tasks. This happens for jobs. This happens for schools. It's just baked in what we believe is just part of the human condition, which I don't believe is necessarily all the way false. But I do believe that there is a evolved lens that we can look at this situation at. So what I've learned from my own life is the following, and that is our body is a barometer of alignment. What do I mean by that? I mean that every time I've been most sick, whether that was just a day, a few days, a weekend, a week of the flu, cold, or just whatever type of symptoms that made me feel so unwell I couldn't get out of bed to perform my day-to-day tasks, and other times where I was bedridden for months, all of them had one common denominator. And that common denominator wasn't that it was all in flu season or that I had every single time I had food poisoning from food that had expired or was mishandled when it was cooked that led me to be sick, even though that has happened too, and that's very real and can happen. There are plenty of other times where I'd feel unwell, where I knew those weren't really the reasons. And so when I look at those periods of time where it was just either a weekend of being sick or a handful of months, those were also times in my life where I was most misaligned. What I mean by that is, of course, I was eating probably not the right foods for me. I was imbalanced in that category. I was overworking. I was around a group of people that weren't really exciting me, that I knew weren't probably aligned with the highest version of myself. And just my environment as a whole was imbalanced. And because my mind, my body felt an imbalance, it kind of forced me to self-correct. And I believe this isn't just an experience that I face. I believe all of us face this in some extent, where our body purposely self-corrects by making us go through a state of restoration, of, in the best way it can, relaxation, to cleanse itself in whichever way it needs. And the more misaligned we are in life, the more imbalanced we are in life, the more there is a necessity to cleanse. So when I realized this, I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, what if my health isn't necessarily like a car that's just bound to have its problems here and there? What if it's actually an incredible piece of technology that was specifically designed, whether it was from the God or creator or source or just a random sequence of events or our evolution, whatever happened, doesn't matter. All I know is this thing's pretty awesome and pretty amazing. It's actually, if I treat it properly, works really, really well, very consistently. And the only times where it has problems is when I don't treat it well, some aspect. And sometimes that's, of course, the food we eat, which is something that a lot of people are now understanding that is a huge problem with their health. That's, I definitely think, a huge part of it, how we choose to fuel our body, the medicine that we provide for it. But also, there is another aspect of that that's not really talked about, and that is the type of people we're around, the type of environment we're around, and the thoughts and ideas we have in our head all the time. If I'm around toxic people that are always complaining, and in a toxic environment, if I live right next to a nuclear power plant, or I don't go all conspiratorial, but there's other towers out there that potentially are exuding different types of frequencies that aren't necessarily compatible with our body. That's caused shutdowns. So there's environmental concerns. There's people. There's food. There's a plethora of different things outside of us that could hinder our body's experience. And also, I would say the worst of them all, the most black pill of them all, would be fear within the mind. The more I fear, the more I am depressed, the more I'm anxious, the more unhappy I am. And every time I am one of those three, or oftentimes a culmination of all of them, that's what oftentimes leads to the most illness, whether that's in the mind, the emotions, or the body as a whole. And so when I realized, like, oh my gosh, well, what if being sick isn't necessarily just something that just happens all the time and it's inevitable, we can't avoid it, but what if it's actually a culmination of all the different inputs that I have in my life, whether it's what I believe is in here, my head, and my external environment. Like I said, the food, the people, the surroundings. And that really shifted it all for me. And in some unique way, it gave me back a little bit of my power to realize, oh my gosh, okay, if I really want to take control of my health, that means I can take control of every aspect of life. Because every time I've been sick is when I'm misaligned in one of those sections I just named. And so when you realize that, you're like, oh my gosh. All right, well, if that's the case, I forgive myself. I didn't know of how big of a deal it is to infect my mind with fear, to infect my body with certain toxins in the environment, or just people complaining, being around that environment at all times, which is shifting my worldview to be more negative. It's actually eating at me like a virus, oftentimes. Okay, now I understand that. It is in my best interest to surround myself with the medicine, so it's called the food, let's call it the water, the people, high vibe, positive, grateful people, oftentimes tend to be healthier too. And third, an environment that is conducive for health and abundance, that actually makes me feel better. And so what I've learned is there's just a few different levers in life that I can pull. And if I do those often, I have a plethora of more energy throughout the day, and I feel more vital. I get less sick. And so I've made life decisions over the past 2 years that has put me in the situations to optimize for a healthy, happy life. And I know it sounds super simple. I know it's something everyone wants, but it really does come down to the basics. What we are bringing in, what we are consuming in all aspects. And if we can get those down and get those to a point that really benefit us, we will have a happy life. This body, this mind, when we give it the right circumstances, it is a recipe for success. It feels like that, plain and simple. And so I got a really good handle on this. And my life began to move incredibly fast in the best way possible. Because when I only have loving people in my life, people that are grateful, people that are happy, when I only surround myself in an environment that is conducive for my health, when I only consume things through the media, whatever it is, that make me happier, make me lighter, and when I'm conscious of the medicine, the food, the water I bring to my body, it's a recipe for greatness. It's a recipe for a fantastic life. So at this point, you understand, let's put that to the side, right? We understand there are inputs we can make that will lead to a certain output of health and happiness, and that's fantastic. And because I was doing that for the past 2 years, I had about a year where I felt, I would say, in comparison to the past, extreme levels of vitality. Not a single cough, not a single sniffle, none of that. And then I had an event that happened to me beginning this year, went to a certain conference that made myself and my partner Elle incredibly, incredibly sick. I'm like, what's going on? I ate the food. I am around the highest five people I've ever met in my entire life. I am taking care of myself. Why am I getting sick? What I realized also is that there's something that happens when we're sick that is necessary for the next version of ourselves. I, in the past, thought, okay, this is my baseline. This is my vitality level. And if I get sick, that means there's something wrong with this equation that I've created in my head that would create an incredible, healthy environment, right? And so that if I'm feeling sick, that's a problem. It's red flags. That's something's out of order. I got to get this back into order. That's all great. And that will work for 99% of people. But then we reach a certain level of health and vitality and just how life presents us with certain experiences. We then raise our vibration. Everything is just energy, frequency, and vibration. We raise our vibration to the point where there are still things in our body that aren't aligned with what we're meant to be doing. And so the past year, the only time I was sick wasn't from the misalignment of people anymore, the environment, or the health, or the food I was putting in my mouth. It was, I'd get sick, I'd get little sniffles, I'd be very groggy, all these things. Right before I was about to do something really big. Right before I was about to start a new business, host my first retreat, put out a piece of writing that really felt like I was speaking from the heart, level of openness and compassion for myself that I'd never done before. Any big leap, I'd feel a little bit sick beforehand. I'm like, why is this? What's happening here is the body is cleansing every aspect of it that is not aligned with the higher vibration necessary to become the person capable of whatever it is that is meant for you. What I mean by that is when we rise in vibration, when we become more unconditionally loving for ourselves and others, when we release our attachment around how things need to be, how things are supposed to be, what we should or shouldn't do, what we can and can't do, when we release all that bullshit and we rise, our body, this incredible piece of technology, is also a database that for our entire life has held on to information of a certain frequency that would help us navigate this life better. And as we begin to rise, much of that data is no longer needed. You need to make room for more higher vibration data to come in. So we must clean out the storage from years and years ago, from a lower vibration version of ourselves that held our then perceptions of how we saw the world that no longer serves us. So if we look at our body as a computer that is going through a hard reset or a software update when we're sick, we realize, just like a computer, when it's going through software update, it needs to reset, it needs to restart, it needs to go into sleep mode, it needs to shut down for a period of time before it can rebirth into a faster, more efficient, in this case, in the human experience, more loving, more capable version of itself. So I say this because sickness, for most people, it's very important for them to understand, is because of a recipe, an equation, a formula of their circumstances and how they choose to perceive those circumstances. And that our sickness is oftentimes a barometer of misalignment. Because we only get sick because we're misaligned, and we have consistent health when we are aligned. And alignment can stem from many different things. Oftentimes it is with our purpose. And when we're aligned with our purpose, our mission, what we're here to actually do with the world, it's very easy for us to eat the right meals, talk to only the right people, to be in the right environment. Any misalignment of that is causing the sickness. That is over here. A lot of you watching this right now that are currently my group of people that are gravitated towards me are experiencing sickness in a way that doesn't make sense, because in the past we kind of understood its equation. Once you kind of master that equation, you feel really good, but now it's messing with your head because you're sick again, but everything's been good. What's going on? I want to put that onto our awareness because that is happening because we're leveling up. We're going through a software update. And that's something to be excited about, even though it's hard to be excited when you're sick and you can barely move and all these other things are happening. I promise you, it's a software update. It's cleansing, cleaning out everything that doesn't serve you. This is why in this new edition of being sick, of being ill, oftentimes it's more emotion filled. And oftentimes not pleasant emotions. It's shame, guilt, fear, anger, sadness, the whole the whole platter of potentially not preferable emotions or life experiences for many. The reason for that is because the body is cleansing everything that doesn't serve it. And how does the body cleanse? It needs to fully feel it. Imagine if we're using the computer analogy. Before we can delete something, before we can drag it to the trash can, we first need to open up the tab that shows all documents, that shows all the data, click on it, view it. And then once we view it, that is when we can drag to the trash can. That's what's happening right now with a lot of our emotions, with a lot of our feelings coming up that aren't necessarily what we like to be feeling during this new type of sickness that we're experiencing, especially right now with how the stars are aligned and just everything going on with the world. This is a massive, massive time for ascension. This is a massive time for transformation. It's actually the year of that, of the year of transformation and ascension. And so we are all collectively, especially those that are beginning to awaken, especially those that are beginning to be fully aligned, we are more susceptible and sensitive to the universe and its way of being and its constant evolution, which sometimes is this beautiful, beautiful field of roses and flowers and dandelions, feels like a playground, and sometimes feels like these dark trenches of hell. But thankfully, now that we understand that this new type of sickness that a lot of you who are listening to me right now that are been attracted to me somehow, some way over the past handful of months or years through my content, you are going through this more than likely. And I want you to give yourself a level of grace and compassion that you've never given yourself before, because what's happening here is your body is just recognizing and taking part in this seismic shift taking place on a universal level that in our own life, in this 3D reality, in your own human body, is resulting in sickness. We are collectively being upgraded to a new vibration that will allow for us to step into the highest version of ourselves, to be capable of, to hold the amount of energy that we're capable of holding, that in our lives will look like leading, will look like creating, will look like connecting to levels of which we felt at capacity of doing before. It's getting us ready to be more powerful. And so I say all this because I felt this way yesterday. Funny enough, I'm releasing a brand new community today, True Brotherhood. Quick note on that, if you haven't heard of that before, I'm releasing True Brotherhood today, starting a community. So is Elle. She's starting one called True Love Club. Mine is for men only, hers is for women only. We're doing everything possible to get people ready for this new levels of alignment. For men, that means getting your wealth right, getting your health right, and also becoming the person capable of attracting whatever you want in life, including love, romantic love, including loving friends, to help understand how we can be more loving for ourselves and to align our connection with whatever it is we believe that is above. We're going to get us fully aligned for the season of life because it's necessary right now. So that's my community. Elle's is just as fantastic. And you know her if you've seen my videos. She is going to blow it out of the park as she always does. But hers is going to be, in particular, helping women attract their dream life. And in particular, their dream man, their dream person. We're not gender exclusive, whatever it is, or sexuality orientation exclusive. Whatever you're interested in, we will make sure that you become a magnet for that person. This isn't a time for compromising. This isn't a time for doing or being a person that is willing to accept 70% of what you want. This is a time to understand that with the universe behind us, we can attract our 100% with whatever it is in life, whether it's a business, whether it's a community, whether it's a person. Now is the time for that. So putting that aside, knowing that we're launching that today, being Valentine's Day 2025, yesterday, my body was releasing. I had a rough day when it came to my physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual health yesterday because my body was cleansing everything necessary to prepare me for the new space I must hold to build an incredible community like this that is fully aligned with the highest version of myself and that is guiding others to become fully aligned with their highest version of themselves. So we are all going to go through these stages, whether we're launching a huge community or not, because of how the universe is currently going, we're going to have these moments of feeling unwell, more likely. Now, I don't wish this upon anyone. I'm not saying you're destined to have this. What I am saying is this is what I've experienced and many, many others that I know have and currently are in this exact moment, being today, and will for the next handful of weeks and months. I'm not saying it's going to last that long, but I'm saying many people will have these type of experiences over the next handful of months because, not to get all into the astrology behind it, but there's a lot going on above that is, like I said, preparing us for something really big and something really special and something really great. And that I hope the energy you're picking up from this video and from what I'm sharing right now does justice to the level of excitement and just awe and just empowerment I feel in this moment to be in this human experience and to have been chosen to guide many, many people through this human experience, because we're in for something really special that for lifetimes we will cherish, we will celebrate, and I'm just so happy with how we're doing it so far, everything going on so far. So I say all this, the reason for this episode today of Cam Talks, I think today's number 13, is that now is a time to give ourselves more grace, compassion, and rest, recovery that is called for at this moment. You're not alone and not feeling well, these weird emotions coming up. I want us to reframe it as a cleansing necessary to become more powerful, become more ourselves, to become more aligned. And that starts today. So thank you for watching. I hope this video brings you more compassion. I hope that you take what serves you and leave what does not. And I hope that today being Valentine's Day, even if you do or do not have a certain person in your life to celebrate this with, I hope today is a sign for you to give yourself some self-love, especially what many of us are going through at this moment. The future is very bright. I love you all, and it's time to awaken.